I almost wore the wrong shirt to the most important night of my life. Not important because of the date. Important because of what happened before I even got to the date. My name is Jake. I am 28 years old. I work as a licensed electrician in Austin, Texas, and I live in a second-floor apartment that smells like old wood and someone else's laundry. My life is not complicated. I wake up, I go to work, I come home, I eat something out of a box or a can, and I fall asleep on a couch that has seen better days. That is it. That is the whole thing. And for a long time that felt like enough. I am not the kind of person who overthinks much. At work, I look at a problem, I figure out the solution, and I fix it. Wires either connect or they do not. Current either flows or it does not. Everything has a clear answer if you look hard enough. I liked that. I liked knowing where things stood. But people are not wires. And some problems do not come with a diagram. Next door to me lives Amber. She is 25, a nursing student in her final year, and she is the kind of person who makes a hallway feel less empty just by existing in it. Her auburn hair is always falling loose around her shoulders. She always has a travel mug in her hand and a textbook under her arm. She moves fast, like she is always running 5 minutes behind, but she always stops when she sees me. Always. Even when she is clearly in a hurry, she stops and talks. We have been neighbors for almost 2 years. Somewhere in that time, without either of us deciding it, we built a routine. Coffee in the lobby on slow mornings. Takeout on nights when neither of us felt like trying. Old movies on her couch when the week had worn us both down to almost nothing. She knew my order at the coffee shop downstairs. I knew she took her tea with honey and no sugar. I knew her laugh and the way it came out louder than she expected, like it always surprised her a little. I never stopped to think about what any of that meant. She was Amber, my neighbor, my friend. That was the whole story, or at least I thought it was. The Thursday that cracked everything open started like any other. I got home from work around 5, ate leftovers standing over the kitchen sink, and then remembered with a small jolt of panic that I had a date in 2 hours. Her name was Kayla. She was a photographer I had met at a backyard cookout 3 weeks earlier. Funny, sharp, easy to talk to. The kind of person you feel comfortable around almost immediately. I had been looking forward to it all week. So why did I feel like I was forgetting something important? I went to my closet and stared at my shirts like they had personally offended me. I had 3 options. A faded gray one I wore to everything. A dark green button-down that still had a small stain near the cuff from a job 2 summers ago. And a light blue one I had bought on sale and worn maybe once. None of them looked right. All of them looked fine. I could not decide, and the longer I stood there, the worse it got. I checked the time. 1 hour and 40 minutes left. That is when I thought of Amber. She had helped me pick a jacket once before a work event, and 3 different people told me I looked sharp that night. 3 people. That had never happened to me before or since. She had a good eye, and more importantly, she was honest. She would not tell me something looked fine just to be nice. I grabbed all 3 shirts off their hangers and walked next door. I knocked twice. From inside, I could hear the low sound of a TV, some kind of medical show with serious voices and urgent music. After a moment, the door opened. Amber stood there in an oversized cream sweatshirt with the sleeves pulled down over her hands. Her auburn hair was loose around her shoulders. She was holding a mug of tea, and her eyes had that particular kind of tired that only comes from too many hours of studying and not enough hours of sleep. She looked at me, then at the shirts draped over my arm and raised one eyebrow. I held the shirts up and told her I needed help. I had a date in less than 2 hours and I could not figure out which one made me look like a normal human being. Something moved across her face. It was quick, the way a cloud shadow moves across a field, there and gone before you can fully register it. Then she stepped back and let me in. Her apartment always felt warmer than mine. Books stacked on the coffee table. A soft blanket bunched up on the couch where she had clearly been sitting. A candle burning somewhere nearby, something that smelled faintly of cedar and clean air. I laid the 3 shirts out across the edge of her coffee table like I was presenting evidence. She set her mug down and crouched in front of them. She studied them seriously, her head tilted slightly to one side, her brow pulled together in a small frown. I almost laughed because she was treating this like it actually mattered. Then she reached out and touched the light blue one. "That one," she said quietly. "It makes you look like someone worth trusting." I told her that sounded like a good thing and started to smile. She did not smile back. She looked away toward the window. Outside, the streetlights were just starting to come on, orange and hazy in the early evening air. Her voice dropped just low enough that I had to lean forward slightly to catch it. She said, "It depends on who you are trying to impress." The room felt different after that. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way I could point to. Just different. Like the air had shifted a few degrees without either of us moving. I tried to push past it. I mentioned Kayla by name. Said she seemed great. Said I just did not want to mess up the first impression. Amber went very still. Her hand stayed resting near the edge of the light blue shirt. She was not looking at the shirts anymore. She was looking at the floor just in front of her, and her jaw was set in a way I had never quite seen before. I asked her if everything was okay. She looked up at me then. Her eyes were steady, but there was something behind them, something pressing forward that she had clearly been holding back for a long time. She said my name once, just Jake, quiet and careful, like she was testing the weight of it. And then she told me she was in love with me. I did not move. I know that sounds strange. A person says something that's significant and the least you can do is react, say something, do something, blink. But I just stood there in the middle of Amber's apartment holding the light blue shirt against my chest like it was some kind of shield, and I could not make a single part of my body respond to what she had just said. She was already standing up. Her face had gone red from her neck to her cheeks, and she was moving toward the door before I had even fully processed the words. She pulled it open and stood beside it without looking at me. Her voice was flat and tight, the way a person sounds when they are working very hard to keep it together. She told me to forget it, told me to go. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She said it again. "Go, Jake." This time her voice cracked right down the middle of my name, and that crack was the loudest thing I had ever heard in a quiet apartment. I walked out. The door clicked shut behind me, soft and final. And I stood in the hallway under the yellow overhead light with the shirt still in my hands and my heart beating in a completely wrong rhythm. I looked at her door for a long moment. The wood grain, the small scuff near the bottom from when she had moved a bookshelf in 2 summers ago. Details I had never noticed before suddenly felt important. I did not knock. I did not know what I would say. So I went back to my apartment, sat down on the edge of my couch, and stared at the wall. I had 40 minutes to get to the restaurant. Getting dressed felt mechanical, like I was operating my own hands from somewhere slightly outside my body. I put on the light blue shirt because it was already in my hand and I could not think of a reason not to. I brushed my teeth. I found my keys on the kitchen counter. I locked my front door. I did all of it without making a single conscious decision. The drive downtown was quiet in a way that had nothing to do with traffic. Every stoplight gave me too much time to think. I kept turning the moment over, looking at it from different angles, trying to find the part where I had missed the signs. The pizza nights, the movie marathons, the time she fixed the collar on my jacket before a work dinner and her hands stayed there just a second longer than they needed to. Had all of that meant something I was too busy to notice? Had I been walking past something real every single day for 2 years and just never looked directly at it? The restaurant was warm and loud when I arrived. String lights hung over the patio. Someone near the door was laughing at something. Normal Thursday night sounds from a world that had no idea what had just happened in a second-floor apartment 20 minutes away. Kayla was already there, sitting at a table near the window. She stood up when she saw me and smiled, and it was a genuinely good smile. Warm and easy. She told me the shirt looked great. My stomach turned over. I thanked her and sat down and told myself to be present, to pay attention, to give this a fair chance, because Kayla had done nothing wrong and she deserved someone who was actually in the room with her. I tried. I want to be clear about that. I genuinely tried. She told me about a shoot she had done that week for a small restaurant that kept changing the brief at the last minute. I told her about a job where a homeowner had grabbed a live wire trying to help and scared 10 years off my life. She laughed. I smiled. The food was good. The conversation moved along without any awkward gaps. But every few minutes my eyes drifted toward the door. Not because I expected anything, just because some part of my brain had not fully arrived at that table yet. Kayla noticed. She was perceptive the way creative people often are, good at reading a room. She waited until a natural pause and then asked gently if I was all right. She said I seemed like I was somewhere else. I told her it had been a long week. She nodded and let it go, but her eyes stayed on mine for just a beat longer than felt comfortable, and I knew she did not entirely believe me. When we stepped outside after dinner, the air had cooled and the street was quieter. She smiled again, but this time it was smaller, more careful. She said she had a good time. I said the same. We both knew something had been slightly off, unspoken but present between us the whole evening, like a sound just outside the range of hearing. I watched her walk to her car. Guilt pressed down on my chest, heavy and specific. She deserved someone who was entirely there. Someone who had not spent half the meal mentally replaying a door clicking shut in a hallway 20 minutes away. The drive home felt longer than it was. When I got back to the building, it was just past 9:30. The hallway was still and dim. I stood outside Amber's door and raised my hand and held it there without knocking. I could hear the faint sound of her TV on the other side. She was still awake. She was right there. I lowered my hand, went inside my own apartment, sat on the couch and did not turn on any lights for a while. The days that followed were the strangest kind of quiet. Amber disappeared from my life completely, not with a dramatic exit but with a simple, total absence. No footsteps in the morning. No sound of her TV through the shared wall at night. No light under her door. The mailbox area in the lobby felt different without her there. I had not understood how thoroughly she had been woven into my daily life until every thread of her was gone. By Monday morning, I could not just sit with it anymore. I stopped at the coffee shop in the lobby and ordered her usual, a green tea latte with honey, and left it outside her door before heading to my truck. No note. No explanation. Just the cup. When I came home that evening, it was gone. No text, no sign of her. But that empty spot on the floor outside her door meant she had opened it. She had seen it. She had picked it up. I held on to that the way you hold on to something small when everything else feels uncertain. By Thursday, I had memorized every crack in my ceiling. I know that sounds like an exaggeration. It is not. I had been lying on my couch every night that week staring straight up, tracing the same thin line that ran from the light fixture toward the far wall, and thinking about a girl who was 12 steps away from my front door and might as well have been on a different planet. Work helped during the day. When you are tracing a fault in a circuit panel or running conduit through a tight crawl space, your brain does not have room for much else. Your hands are busy, your eyes are focused, and the problem in front of you is the only thing that exists. I was grateful for that. I took every extra job my supervisor offered that week. Stayed late twice. Volunteered to drive out to a site 40 minutes outside the city on Wednesday afternoon just to have somewhere to be. But every evening I came home to the same quiet hallway. Same dim light overhead. Same door to my left that gave me nothing. On Wednesday night, I actually stood outside her door for a full minute. I counted. I had my hand raised, knuckles close enough to the wood that I could feel the faint coolness coming off it, and I just stood there running through opening lines in my head and discarding every single one. Hey, I wanted to check on you. Too casual, like nothing had happened. I have been thinking about what you said. Too heavy, like I was about to deliver a verdict. I miss you. True. Completely true. But 3 words that carried their own kind of weight, and I was not ready to throw that kind of weight around yet. I lowered my hand and went back inside. Friday morning arrived gray and damp, the sky the color of old concrete, a slow drizzle tapping against my kitchen window while I made coffee. I stood at the counter and listened to the building wake up around me. The elevator down the hall. A door somewhere on the floor above. The familiar clatter of the mailboxes in the lobby. No footsteps next door. She had class on Friday mornings. I knew her schedule the way you know the schedule of someone whose life runs parallel to yours. 8 o'clock lecture, back by noon, usually studied through the afternoon with the TV on low for background noise. I had absorbed all of it without ever meaning to, the way you absorb the habits of anyone you spend enough time near. I poured my coffee and made a decision. I drove to the campus medical building on my lunch break. I told myself it was just to see if she was okay. That is all. I was not going to say anything significant. I was not going to make it weird. I just needed to see with my own eyes that she was fine, that the silence was a choice and not something worse. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for 20 minutes feeling like a complete idiot before I drove away without going inside. That evening I went to the gym for the first time in 3 months, because I needed somewhere to put all the energy that had nowhere to go. I ran on the treadmill until my legs felt wooden and my lungs were burning and my brain was finally, blissfully, too tired to replay anything. I drove home, showered, ate toast standing at the counter, and went to bed before 9. Saturday morning I woke up and the first thing I thought about was Amber. I lay there for exactly 4 minutes. Then I got up, got dressed, went downstairs and ordered 2 coffees. Her usual green tea latte with honey, and a black coffee for me that I did not really want but needed something to do with my hands. I carried them upstairs and stood in front of her door and knocked before I could talk myself out of it. Silence. Then the soft sound of movement inside. The door opened slowly, like she was not entirely sure she wanted to see whoever was on the other side. And then she saw me. Amber looked like the week had been just as long for her as it had been for me. Her auburn hair was pulled loosely over one shoulder, and her eyes were tired in a way that went deeper than just sleep. She had on the same cream sweatshirt from that Thursday night, and she looked at me, then at the 2 cups in my hands, and something in her face shifted. I told her I did not know how to stay away any longer. She stepped back from the door without saying anything and let me in. Her apartment felt different in the daylight. Less warm, more exposed, like a room that had been through something and had not quite recovered. The blanket was still on the couch. The books were still on the coffee table. But the candle was not burning, and the TV was off, and everything felt very still. We sat down. I put the cups between us on the table and kept my hands wrapped around mine. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. She went first. She said she was sorry, that she should not have said it the way she did, that she had put me in an impossible position right before I had somewhere to be, and that was not fair. Her voice was calm and measured, the voice of someone who had been rehearsing this speech alone for days. I stopped her. I told her she had nothing to apologize for, that being honest about something real is never the wrong move, even when the timing is terrible. That I had spent the whole week wishing I had not just walked out of that door. She looked up at me, carefully, like she was not entirely sure what I was building toward. I told her that the date with Kayla was fine, that Kayla was a perfectly good person, that I had spent the entire evening thinking about what happened before I even left the building, that when I got home that night and stood outside her door and did not knock, it was not because I did not want to. It was because I did not know what I was ready to say. Amber was quiet for a moment. Then she asked what I was ready to say now. I looked at her sitting across from me in the gray Saturday light, tired and honest and present, and I told her the truest thing I knew. I told her that the week without her had felt like walking into a room and finding all the furniture gone, that everything technically still worked, the walls were still up, the lights still came on, but something essential was missing and I noticed it every single hour. I told her I did not have a clean answer yet, but I knew that not having her in my life was not something I was willing to accept. She looked at the cups on the table, then back at me. Her eyes were bright but steady. She said okay, that we could figure it out, but that we had to go slow because she had spent months protecting herself from exactly this hope, and she needed to rebuild her footing carefully. I told her slow was exactly right. She reached out and wrapped both hands around her cup, and for the first time in a week, something in the room felt warm again. She smiled first. Small and careful, the kind of smile that has been through something and come out the other side a little wiser. It was not a fireworks kind of smile. It was better than that. It was real. We sat in her apartment for another hour that same Saturday, talking the way we used to before everything got complicated. She told me about a practical exam she had coming up and how her study group kept canceling on her at the last minute. I told her about a crawl space job that week and the family of raccoons I had apparently disturbed behind a wall panel. She laughed at that, a full laugh that she did not try to hold back, and the sound of it untied something in my chest that had been knotted all week. Before I left, she walked me to the door, which she had never done before. We had always just said goodbye from the couch. It was a small thing, but I noticed it. I told her I would see her soon. She said she would hold me to that. I went back to my apartment and stood in the middle of my kitchen for a moment, just standing there, feeling something I did not have a precise word for. Not excitement exactly, more like relief, like a pressure that had been building for days had finally found somewhere to go. The following day, Sunday, I texted her in the afternoon and asked if she wanted to grab coffee downstairs. She replied in under a minute, said yes, said to give her 20 minutes. She showed up in a dark green jacket with her auburn hair loose around her shoulders and color back in her face. She looked rested. She looked like herself. We grabbed our usual table by the window, the one with the slightly uneven leg that rocked if you put too much weight on one side. We had sat there probably 30 times before. Felt familiar and also, somehow, completely new. We talked for almost 2 hours. Not about what had happened between us, not directly, just about everything surrounding it. Her program. My work. A documentary she had watched the night before about deep-sea creatures that she described in such enthusiastic detail that I found myself genuinely interested in something I would never have sought out on my own. I told her about a book a coworker had lent me that I kept meaning to read and kept putting down after 3 pages. She took the title and said she would tell me if it was worth pushing through. At some point the conversation slowed into a comfortable quiet, the kind that does not need to be filled. Outside the window, people moved along the sidewalk with their weekend routines. A kid on a bike. 2 women with strollers. A man walking a dog that was clearly in charge of the whole operation. Amber was watching the street too. Without looking away from the window, she said that she had almost convinced herself to transfer buildings in the spring. I turned and looked at her. She said it quietly, like a confession she had been holding in her jacket pocket for months. She said that a few weeks before that Thursday night she had actually looked up other apartments in the area, because she thought that putting some physical distance between us was the only way to stop feeling what she was feeling. She had been that close to disappearing from my life entirely, and I would never have known why. That landed somewhere deep and specific. I did not say anything right away. I let it sit. Then I told her I was glad she stayed. She finally looked at me then. Something in her expression settled. Like a question that had been hovering for a long time had just found its answer. We walked back to the building together as the afternoon light turned golden and low. At the bottom of the stairs we both slowed down at the same time without either of us deciding to. Neither of us was quite ready to go back to our separate apartments and close our separate doors. She said it still scared her. Not us exactly, but the possibility of us. The weight of wanting something that close to home and the risk that came along with it. I told her it scared me too. That I would be lying if I said I had it all figured out. But that the version of my life where I let this pass without trying was something I could not talk myself into anymore. She looked at me for a moment. Then she reached out slowly and slipped her hand into mine. Her fingers were cold from holding her cup, and I closed my hand around hers and held it steady. We stood there for a little while, not saying much, just standing together at the bottom of the stairs while the evening settled in around us. After that, things moved the way real things move. Not in a rush, not all at once, but steadily and with intention. We kept meeting for coffee. We started taking evening walks around the neighborhood after she finished studying. Just 20 or 30 minutes. Nothing planned. She began texting me small things during the day. A funny observation from the hospital floor where she did her clinical hours. A photo of a cloud that looked like a socket wrench. Things that had no purpose except to say I thought of you. I started doing the same. One evening, about 2 weeks after that Saturday conversation, we were sitting on her couch watching one of her favorite old movies. The room was warm. The credits were rolling. She was leaning against my side with her head resting just below my shoulder, and I had my arm around her without either of us having made a formal decision about it. She tilted her head up and looked at me. She said she had been thinking, that she did not want to keep calling it going slow if what it really was going right. I looked at her. Her eyes were steady and certain, and I had seen that face almost every day for 2 years, and somehow it still managed to show me something new. I told her I thought that was a pretty good way to put it. She smiled, slow and warm, and leaned back against me. The next morning she knocked on my door early, before I had even started coffee. I opened it still half asleep, and she stood there in her dark green jacket with 2 cups from the coffee shop downstairs, her auburn hair catching the light from the hallway window. She held out my cup and said she thought she would start the day right for once. I took it. I stepped back from the door. She walked in like she belonged there, because she did, and I think somewhere underneath all the noise of the past 2 weeks, I had known that for a long time.